Hey guys, my name is Bob and I just watched B-Movie. Now I know what you're thinking. Are you okay? This movie came out like 2007. It's a dead meme, dude. Yes, I know this movie's been driven into the ground with the jokes, but I don't care. I feel like I have something to add to the discussion and I've been wanting to make this review for years. Plus, it is surprisingly starting to get relevant again. Jerry Seinfeld said on Twitter recently he's considering a second movie. A lot of people said no, but you know, just in case, I wanted to remind you all of the first one. Also, I don't think it needs mention how many people talk about this movie ironically. You know what I'm talking about. Sitting at the campfire, roasting your marshmallows, then somebody pulls out the B-movie script and everyone engages in the hilarity that is this movie's script. If you need an icebreaker for your first date, just whip out B-movie. It has been scientifically proven that dates are 42% more likely to be successful if you read B-movie to your significant other. Trust me. I'm a scientist. Just print that baby out and take it everywhere you go. You are guaranteed to get laid. So with that all being said, I wanted to watch this movie again with an open mind. I took some notes being as thorough as possible, because I didn't want this modern masterpiece to go unrecognized. That was a joke, ladies and gentlemen. That was sarcasm at work. Oh yes, thank you. I should note this will be the first review to introduce something I'd like to call the Macleod scale. I'll narrow down the pros and cons, what it does right, what it does wrong, and in the end deciding if it's even good at all. But let's be real here, it's just a number scale. Don't get too excited. So without further pandering, let's get started. B-movie. Perhaps one of the most confusing movies to ever exist, created by Jerry Seinfeld. So if you don't know, let me really quickly introduce you to the plot of this movie. Jerry Seinfeld stars as Barry B. Benson, who after not feeling the desire to work as a bee the rest of his life, he decides to leave the hive with the bee range of people. Doing so, he meets a human played by Renee Zellweger. Then after some confusing love interest is involved, he kinda decides that humans are evil and stealing honey, so he's like, alright, I hate the humans, no honey for you. So like, he sues the humans, then he's a pilot, and I guess he's the hero at the end. I don't know. Hey Barry, I know you kind of put everyone on the verge of death, but we're gonna make you one of the Bee Ranger things, cause you're cool now, I guess. Save the day. I have to say the plot is very lackluster. Like, I know it's a kid's movie, but this movie has so many issues. If CinemaSins hasn't done this movie yet, I recommend they do so, because there are so many things wrong with this movie. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's first talk about what this movie does right. Spoiler warning, not much. I have to give this movie some credit. There is not one dull moment in this movie. It seems like the director's goal was to make something happen every second of the movie so you'll stay invested the entire time. There is always something happening in this movie. Whether it's a major plot element or a really bad bee pun, something is happening. That doesn't necessarily mean every moment is humorous or enjoyable, but there's no filler and I can respect that. The animation, while a little outdated, looks pretty good, especially considering the movie was made in like 2007. It's not terrible to look at. Some of the humans look very creepy though, but the colors are very nice and it certainly has a sense of scale as well as doing a fantastic job at motion. When I say motion, I mean when they're flying through the sky or when they're on a truck window. It no doubt looks great visually and keeps up with the times as showing off some impressive animation.
Is that it?
Yeah, that's it.
Really? It must be a pretty bad movie.
Yes, that's right. Now, get out of my house.
Okay, I'll just leave then.
Alright, bye Barry. Love you. Anyway, yes, if you came to this review for some reassurance that this movie is bad, it is. The entire movie feels like a really bad Saturday Night Live skit with an unhealthy amount of bee jokes, really poor voice acting, and just a lazy pile of plot conveniences and unlikable characters to top it all. Now, some of the things I'm about to say may seem like nitpicking, but in general, I personally just feel like this is a bad movie. There's only so much you can say about a movie that has incredible issues identifying its target audience. Seriously, why was this movie made? Who can enjoy this? Like, I know it's rated PG, but the movie panders at adult themes, but at the same time forces humor that only a very young audience would enjoy. It's really just a confusing mess of a movie. Not to mention this movie has an unhealthy obsession with reminding you that this is a movie about bees. I get it, it's a movie about bees. It's in the title, Bee Movie. And let's not forget this movie promotes bestiality and it's incredibly awkward, especially the dream sequence. I must say that this is the only sane character in this movie. Like, you're cheating on your husband for a bee and she like completely ignores him the entire movie. No explanation, he just kinda exists and everyone's okay with this.
That bee is living my life! Let it go, Kenny.
When will this nightmare end?
Everyone else is either brain dead or a one-dimensional cardboard side character that has no relevance at all. For example, you are so much bigger than him. Why would you take out attack? What are you doing? How are either of you qualified to ride a plane if you can't handle one bee? Is there really no one on that plane who is more qualified to ride a plane than a bee? Does everyone in this movie have the brain the size of a peanut? There's also this scene earlier on in the movie where one of the characters gets angry and stings the extremely unlikable antagonist character in the courtroom that gets put in a hospital. Putting a bee in a human hospital makes about as much sense as that scene from Fateful Findings where the plugs aren't even in his nose correctly. Then there's the other main character. Vanessa is apparently having an affair with her husband, with a bee, and the same character is well aware of this. This is honestly one of the most painful scenes to watch if you think about the situation they're in. Basically, he walks into them having their second date, I guess, and he kinda just has to accept it. Then they get into a fight when Vanessa leaves the room. Then she comes back and just assumes it's entirely his fault.
Be the nicest bee I've met in a long time.
Long time? What are you talking about? Are there other bugs in your life?
You could not have made this scene more uncomfortable. Oh, and it's worth mentioning they casually talk about suicide.
How about a suicide pact?
How do we do it?
Oh yes, this movie's for kids. And let's not forget the scene where in the dream sequence she like crashes into a tree. I guess this is humorous shock value, but it might have scared a few kids out there. And the drag queen joke, which is just tasteless to be honest. Then at the end of the movie, she names the shop Vanessa and Barry. It's not like you're married or anything and maybe thought twice before. Oh no, wait, they're getting married. Alright, great. Next time you see a bee and you think he's got a pretty good looking stinger, hit him up. Maybe you'll own a flower shop together and get married. This movie. Also, it's mentioned once or twice how all bees are cousins. So like if you're dating another bee, you're dating your cousin. So like I guess this movie thinks incest is okay too, or really likes talking about it.
Aren't they our cousins too?
Distant.
Then there's this part that just annoys me a lot, where the mosquito sees a van holding blood in it, and Barry is totally okay with stealing blood from the humans, but it's not okay to take honey from the bees. This has hypocrite written all over it. Doesn't this basically ruin the point of the entire movie? Basically making Barry's integrity for his cause close to zero? Didn't even think about it.
They make the honey, and we make the money.
They make the honey and we make the money?
Yes, he literally just said that. Why are these two characters so cliche unnecessarily evil? Don't they notice all the bees are like wearing clothes, living their lives, talking for Christ's sake, and meanwhile you're committing genocide on a bunch of completely sentient bees? Have you forgotten bees can defend themselves in court? They're not brainless. It's pretty terrifying actually. Like I could legitimately see these two characters as serial killers like 2 years later. If we're being realistic though, this scene only exists so Barry can get exposed to enough of the plot's dramatic structure so he can be the first sentient bee ever to actually bother doing something about it. I just can't get immersed in this part because it honestly only exists to progress the story. That's it. Like, think about this. Why has there never been an uprising before if these bees are so intelligent? How is Barry B freaking Benson the one calling them out on this? Simple answer, he's the main character. And this is a pretty big nitpick, but just something I noticed. There's this part where they say they're gonna work bees for the rest of their lives, supposedly until they die, but Barry's parents are like almost always home. Like, I'm not sure if bees have a 9-to-5 job or if they're just retired, but it doesn't make any sense since they're like never working. Then there's something that confuses me so much this entire movie. How is she talking to them and they can have a perfectly fine conversation from across the counter? How is he projecting his voice in a giant-ass courtroom? And yet the dude fixing a light bulb doesn't hear a bee talking from like a few feet away. Or the guy in the grocery store who for some reason didn't hear him talking before he swatted him. This movie doesn't make any sense. Also, it's worth mentioning the voice acting for this movie is very dull. Like, no emotion at all, and if any exists, it just feels unnatural. A friend of mine told me that this entire movie is basically if Jerry Seinfeld was a bee, and after listening to him talk for an hour, I realized, yeah, he's absolutely right. The vocal inflections and everything make it very obvious that he wrote this. I gotta say something. She saved my life. I gotta say
What are you doing?
I'm just making fun of the script. It's kind of funny.
Are you making fun of me?
No, I'm just... B-Movie is a very strange movie. It's certainly not one of the worst movies I've ever seen, but it's sorta just a movie that exists. Honestly, it's a pretty below average movie, but it's not terrible. It's nothing special, just a movie about bees. A very confusing, disoriented movie about bees with issues identifying its target audience. Jerry Seinfeld is a bee. That's really it. I don't know how this movie has any sort of relevance like 9 years later. either. It's a lazily written movie that has a couple good jokes I'll admit, but is really watered down by the excessive B jokes, underdeveloped characters, and confusing motives and plot elements that just weren't explained properly. This movie really just taught me that being a mindless factory worker is totally okay. Humans are disgusting, sad excuses of life that deserve to die, and bestiality and incest is totally okay. But I did learn something though. I learned that after watching movies like these, I can better appreciate the ones that actually have some sort of complexity or logic. I know I'm asking for a lot from a movie about talking bees, but still, this movie has quite a few issues that I just couldn't let slide, and I'm disappointed by how lackluster and lazy the story is. Most of it is just kid-friendly, mindless nonsense, and then some of it hints at tasteless adult themes. I just can't relate to this movie at all because it has trouble leveling to my sense of humor. There's a lot I didn't even mention, like calling Larry King a Jew, or that part where Vanessa just stabs her hand. Why? It's little things like that that get to me with this movie, but in retrospect, it's just a bland movie that tries to be different, but in my eyes failed to do that. Let me just say this, if you haven't seen this movie and for some reason you want to see this movie now, go for it. I won't stop you. It does have a story, and I know quite a few people who really like this movie. If you like it and you've seen it before, that's fine too. Unfortunately, I don't really like this movie, but if you do, that's fantastic. I want you to know that I respect your opinion, because a few years ago I used to really like this movie, but after giving it some thought and watching this movie like an eagle, I've changed my mind. However, it doesn't matter how old you are or how closely you watched this movie. If you watched it and think this is a very entertaining movie, then all power to you. Don't change your opinion just because someone else didn't like it. So with that being said, I'm going to burn this movie. If that makes you uncomfortable, you've been warned.
I've never burned a movie before.
So where does this movie go on the Penguin scale? I'm gonna give this movie a B. 4 out of 10. Yes, I'm giving this movie 4 penguins out of 10. Most of the points being for the visuals and the fact that it even has a cohesive plot. This movie isn't Satan's Spawn or anything, it's maybe just not my favorite movie ever. If you agree or disagree, make sure to leave a comment telling me why. Thank you so much for watching. This is my first movie review and I will likely be doing more soon. If you have any requests, I might look into it. If you like this video, leave a like. And as always, good vibes everyone. Content creators are being ignored, and this is incredibly annoying. Vimeo, your less popular cousin, has this feature for Christ's sake, so why don't you?
Another handstand, nice kip, reverse hacked, oh, nice leg extension, good form. Now here comes the big dismount. Look at the rotation, full in, double back, and she sticks the land.